did a pretty good job, but we just wanted to emphasize a few things just to make sure you guys understand. So,
if you look at it just under the discuss, look on day 2.
oh.
Discuss key issue 2, that's where I linked yours.
Okay, so I want you guys to talk to each other because I just want to make sure we understand a few definitions. So talk to your neighbor about what a market center means, what the market area is, what range means, and threshold. Okay? So talk to your neighbor and come up with those definitions together.
Okay, so the market center.
Okay, so it sounds like most of you have a working definition. So then who can tell me what a market center is?
The middle of the market.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I mean it's pretty self-explanatory, but essentially it's where you put your operational business, right? You want it in the center of your market area. Okay, so what is market area? Yeah, Jaden, right?
Yeah, the area surrounding your market.
Good, yeah, so the whole area that surrounds your market center. Okay, so now who can tell me what range is? Yeah, Emma.
The maximum distance people are willing to travel to like get to that service or to buy that good.
Mm-hmm. And so why would you say like it's like there's a certain max range? Like why doesn't it extend out forever?
Because people aren't willing to drive for a really long time just to get something really like simple, like go to the grocery store or something. They want it really close to their house so they don't have to travel for a long time.
Good. Okay, excellent. Okay, and then lastly, what is threshold? Yeah.
Okay, so threshold is like the minimum amount of customers needed to support the business.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so essentially it's just that minimum number of people that you would need in order for your business to thrive. Excellent. So after this. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about is, so Dallin brought up a little briefly, you guys saw that map with all the different size hexagons, right? And so what kind of determines that is essentially the size of that place, right? So the book talked about 4 different places, talked about cities, towns, villages, and hamlets. So I just wanted to give you guys a kind of a better idea of what these things mean. So I'm sure you guys know what a city is, right? I mean, you have Salt Lake City, for example, Provo City. So you kind of get an idea for how large and how extensive that is. So for a town, one example would be Manti here in Utah. So the book talked about how a town usually has a population between 1,000 and 5,000 people. How many of you have been to Manti? Raise your hand. Okay. So not a very, very big place, right? So, but within Manti there are businesses, there are different establishments that do support that community, right? But they're probably not like big chain stores or anything, right? Because they just don't have the population to support those. Okay, and then another one I talked about was a village. So one example would be Alta. Have any of you guys been to Alta? Okay, there are a lot of people there. No, not really. So yeah, so Alta is what would be an example of a village. There's just not a lot of people there, and so they're not going to probably have a lot of big establishments either, right? And then for a hamlet, there's not really like a lot of great examples here in Utah, but one that I found is down in Sanpete County. There's a very, very, very small agriculture community called Freedom, and so as you can tell, I mean, this is pretty much all that's there, right? So that kind of gives you an idea about how different settlements, like what different settlements look like, how big they are, and the kind of populations they support. Okay, so one thing I also want to talk to you guys about were some actual specific examples of how we could apply some of the things you guys talked about in the reading. So identifying what the market center is, what the market area and the range and the threshold are. So, here's one example. This is Intermountain Healthcare. So what type of consumer service is this? Okay. Why do you think it's public then? No, you're good. Does anyone want to help out, Ben? Okay, I want you guys to talk to your neighbor and identify what type of consumer service this is, okay? And we'll talk about it. So turn to your neighbor and talk about what kind of consumer service Intermountain Healthcare is. Okay. Does any brave soul want to take a stab at this and see what kind, identify what type of consumer service Intermountain Healthcare is? Yeah, Clay.
I just spaced the name.
No, you're good. Does anyone want to help out Clay? Yeah, Marshall.
Is it health and social?
Yes, so it's a health service, right? So one of the things that the book talked about were health services, and so yeah, even though most people go to the hospital, right? It's not necessarily like a public service unless it's actually run by the government, and so a lot of these are just actual private hospitals. So it would be just a private hospital, so it's a health service. Okay, so what do you guys notice about this map here? I took this from Google Maps, and so just here in part of Utah County, these spots identify where Intermountain Healthcare centers are. So where do you guys notice where these health centers are? What kind of settlements? Okay, Andrew, looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, they're both big cities and the big towns.
Good, okay. So why do you think they would be by the big cities?
Because that's where most customers are.
Good, yeah. So hospitals, pretty big, right? They need a lot of customers. So they're going to be in centers where there's going to be a lot of population. And so as you can see that they're kind of spread out a little bit. And so that way they can take in that larger population. So that's going to determine, that's their market area, right? What do you guys notice about the range? How far do you think people are willing to go to get to a hospital? Okay, yeah, Talon, good point. Depends on how severe their injuries are. What else? Okay, good. Yeah. Kelly's got a good point. You're probably going to drive as far as you need to get to a hospital, right? And so, because there's not going to be a lot of hospitals around, so you're willing to drive farther to get to a hospital. So that's kind of why they're so spread out. Okay. And then we talked a little bit about how the threshold, right, the minimum people that they need in order to support the hospital, it's going to be probably a lot bigger, right, because they're near the cities. Good. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Utah Jazz. So what type of consumer service is this? Good. Okay, entertainment. The book talks about hospitality as well and leisure. So where's the market center for this? Salt Lake. Okay. Why do you think that is?
Because that's where the stadium is.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that's where the stadium is, but why do you think they put the stadium there?
Because it's the capital. That's the most population.
Good, okay. Yeah, so Emma's right. So there's going to be a larger population. What about people who aren't necessarily from Utah? Do you think if they were a fan of the Jazz that they would be willing to travel to Salt Lake for that service? Okay, good, yeah. So Dallin actually showed on that map, right, of all the different sports teams across the U.S. And so they're willing to put those places in, larger cities across the U.S. You don't see a whole bunch of different competing stadiums, right, along here because people are willing to travel really far for that type of service. Okay, so we just talked a little bit about that. So the market area is going to be really large, and people are going to be willing to travel a lot farther for that. And what about the threshold? What do you guys think about the threshold for that? What would be the threshold for the Utah Jazz? Yeah, probably a lot of people. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So Ezra is saying that, in the stadium they're going to have a lot of seats, and so they're expecting to have a lot of people. So yeah, so the threshold for this is probably going to be pretty big. Okay, you guys familiar with Days Market, just down the road? What type of consumer service is this? Okay, I'm hearing a lot of things like retail. What else? Okay, no, yeah, you guys are right. So it is retail. And, it's a grocery store. So why do you think the market center is where it is? Okay, turn to your neighbor and I want you to talk about why you think Days Market is where it is. Okay, why is that its market center?
Near a lot of like neighborhoods. So yeah, the closest is that
Yeah, like the 19th, so it's on the road, it's like,
that's what it is. Like, those are all
Okay. Josh, one sitting behind Marshall, would you like to share what you guys talked about in terms of why you think Days Market is where it is?
I said that I thought it was where it is because it's like close to where a lot of people are. Because a lot of people don't want to drive like 6 hours to get to school. So a lot of people try to get like close to school. So like since Days Market is so like close to everyone else, it's
Good. Okay, yeah, I like that. So it's a really good point. So imagine Days Market wasn't here. Where would be the closest place for people living in the Edgemont area to get groceries?
The little bitty Walmart.
Okay, so yeah, possibly the little Walmart. Where else? Okay, Costco. How far? Yeah, Harmon's good. Okay, so So those are kind of farther away, right? So Days Market is kind of an optimal spot, right? Because it's serving this community where people would have to drive a lot farther to get to grocery stores. And so with grocery stores, do you think they have a large range, short range?
Some have a shorter range.
Shorter range. Okay. Why do you think they have a shorter range?
There's a lot of stores.
Because they're not thick.
Okay, so there's a lot of them, but just because there's a lot of them, does that mean that they're going to have a shorter range?
Yes.
What determines the range?
Time people are going.
Okay, yeah, good. Marshall pointed out that's how far people are willing to drive. So, are you willing to drive all the way to Salt Lake for groceries?
No.
Okay, so it's probably going to be a lot shorter, right? What about the threshold? What do you think the threshold is for a grocery store? Yeah, Clay.
Well, I think because Days is a lot smaller. I guess a traditional retail is like like a farm store is like 2,000, so like, but since it's only a lot smaller, so I think it's probably like 1,000 people, 5,000 maybe.
Good, yeah. So yeah, that's good. I mean, we don't know the exact numbers on these, on certainly the thresholds, but yeah, that's a good estimate about probably how many people they're going to have, right? Since it's a smaller market, serving a smaller community, probably doesn't need that large of a threshold. Okay, and then finally we're going to talk about this example. What type of consumer service is BYU? Education, good. And what about the market center? Why is BYU where it is?
Because it is
Utah has the highest population, that was the church's first and BYU is a privately funded institution.
Good, okay, yeah. Clay gave a really good definition for that, yes.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So if you've got like a big college or whatever, then you've got like a lot of apartments and a pretty big population around it. So what would come first, like the apartments and the people, or the college? Would like people come because of the college, or would the college come because of like the apartments and the people?
That's a really good question. Does anyone want to answer that for Sage? Yeah,
Both.
Andrew. Both? Okay, why do you say that, Andrew?
Because once the college is there, there's going to be more apartments built to handle the influx of college kids.
Good, yeah.
And they may choose to build their homes near a lot of fun.
Good. Do you guys know about when BYU was actually founded? Okay, yeah.
I bet you could Google it.
Yeah, you guys could Google it. You guys don't actually have to do
If
that. I'll just
only
give
you had
the-
access to the internet
It's 18.
and an electronic
Okay,
device.
good. 1875. Okay. So do you think back in 1875 there were a lot of apartments? Okay, probably not. But over time, as BYU has grown and as it's become more I guess prestigious, or as more people have been willing to attend BYU to get a degree, as Sage, with Sage's question, right? What came first, the apartments or BYU? It's probably safe to say that the apartments came later because as BYU became more of a place that people wanted to go for school, then they're going to build more housing for people who want to attend the school. So that's a really good question. Okay, so what about the range? How far are people willing to go to BYU? What do you think?
Like all of Utah?
The country.
No, it'd be country.
The whole country? Okay. Yeah, Marshall.
Probably a lot longer than from other places because once you get there, you usually stay for a little while, and it's not like just a one-time trip there and back. You just go and you stay there for a semester or a lot of semesters, and you come back. So probably further because you're gonna stay there for a long time.
Good. Okay. Yeah, Susie, right?
Also, it's easier for people out of the school to get into the learning. So, like, I'm also language immigrant. You're going to a lot of things. It's also like for college, it's like a bigger deal.
Yeah, good. So you guys have all made really good points. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say what the range would be, right? It kind of depends on your personal preference. So there are people who maybe are not from the United States or even from Utah who want to go and attend BYU. And so they're willing to make that huge distance to go to the college. Good. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions about what we talked about? No? Okay. Ms. Hardy, do you want to expand on anything that we talked about earlier?
Yes, I do. Because I always love when a picture of Idaho comes up on the PowerPoint because then I get to make fun of it.
Kylie, don't hate on Idaho. I saw your face.
But we'll get there in a second. But like, first of all, we've already talked about this a little bit, but if I'm going to try and figure out where I want to put my service, I mean, when we talked about industry, I mean, we looked at situation and site factors, right? Okay, so with services, what am I going to do to decide where to locate? I'm hearing a lot of whispers, so anyone want to raise their hand? Voter, what am I going to do?
There's like the big process of stuff, like find the range and find the threshold and then do this with it and do this with it. Then measure this, then do this with it, and do this with it. And if it's this, you get.
There was a lot of this in that, and I like that. I appreciate that. But yeah, so you're going to look, like you're going to compute the range, you're going to compute the threshold, and then you'll, draw your market area, right? But I mean, this can be easier said than done. So let's look at the great state of Idaho. Story time. My senior year of high school, my parents were like, you know what we're gonna do? We want to make Miss Hardy's life really easy, or really difficult. And obviously my parents call me Miss Hardy. And they were like, her life's been too easy, so we're gonna move to Rexburg, Idaho.
Oh, yes.
Just for funsies. Okay.
Have fun with that.
So, senior year of high school too. It was like not my jam. Anyway, here's the thing about little Rexburg, Idaho. It's like, here's our house. You could like see the temple, and then you could see the high school, and then there's like BYUI, and that's it. Besides that, it's potato fields all around, just surrounded by potato fields. So here's my thing though. I love Target. Like that is my jam. But the only Target, like even close to us, was down here in Idaho Falls. That's like a half-hour drive. You can't really make it in less because cops are always in between those two places because people really like to speed there. So when they decided to put Target here, even though, I mean, so between Idaho Falls and Rexburg, you get like a lot of potato fields. You get like a lot of livestock, but like, I mean, you've got like Rigby over here and like some other like little itty bitty places where it's like, there are not a lot of people there. Okay? Why do you guys think they chose Idaho Falls rather than like moving to the middle, like between Idaho Falls and Rexburg to cut down on that drive? Talk to your neighbor. Why would they choose Idaho Falls instead of in between?
Trust me.
Okay, why Idaho Falls instead of in between Idaho Falls and Rexburg? They're gonna get to about the same amount of people, right? Yeah.
So they want to visit like in the town because their main goal was the threshold in that town.
Mm-hmm. That threshold is huge, right? And if they're in a more concentrated area with more people there, that's going to cut down on the driving time a ton. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of people from Rexburg were willing to drive to Idaho Falls to go to Target. Because everyone loves Target. It's just so great. Anyway.
I beg to disagree.
Don't judge my lifestyle. Anyway, so, yeah, they're gonna go for that population density because I mean the
closer they are, the more likely they're gonna actually go. Especially, so for a long time, Rexburg, like the big attraction was Brolo's. That was their grocery store. That was like the biggest store in town. Besides that, there was nothing. But then, they built a super Walmart. Do you think that affected whether or not we were gonna go to Idaho Falls for Target?
No.
I mean, Walmart isn't Target, but I mean, they're very similar. So, am I suddenly gonna like stop going to Target?
Yes. Maybe.
Yeah, I will. Because gas
I
is
mean, it
expensive.
depends on how much you love Target.
I really love it. But also online shopping. I've talked to you guys about online shopping. I clearly have problems. But yeah, speaking of online shopping, what effect do you think online shopping would have on like range?
Make it go up by a lot.
Go up? If we're talking about actually going to a specific store.
Go down.
Go down. I'm seeing a lot of people like, yeah. So kind of with what we were saying, the gravity model. Real quick, turn to your partner, explain to them what the gravity model is.
Model that determines the best spot for your stuff, for your store. Closer you are, more people there are. Closer are the people.
Ask the discipline committee.
Hey guys, what's the gravity model? And feel free to explain this in terms of targets located in Idaho Falls. Who can help me out here? You're looking so confident, even though you're hiding.
Well, isn't the gravity market like you determine the like range and the threshold, and then you use that to like decide where you putting your thing?
So it's very, you're close. So basically what they're saying is, okay, yeah, you have your range, you have your threshold, but we want to make sure we're limiting how long people are driving, because you're going to get more people if you're in a more populated place where they have to drive less. So I mean, that's why they're not in the middle here, right? Because yeah, I mean, you have access to similar amounts of people probably, but they're gonna have to drive farther, and therefore they're less likely to go. Okay? Because like, I mean, in where I live, here in Provo. The BYU Creamery is literally like a 5-minute walk from my apartment. So do I buy a lot of my groceries there? Yes. Creamery on this. So, I mean, do I eat a lot of burgers there? Yes, it's embarrassing.
Yes.
But like Smith's is cheaper, but like I'd actually have to drive there, right?
Oh.
Anyway, so people are like, it's really hard to use a car when you don't have one. So people are less likely to travel further to go somewhere like that's like, no matter the situation, even if they're within that range, they're more likely to go if they are closer. Okay, but then here's the thing. Everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs access to services. So what happens when a community cannot support these services they need? Like a grocery store. Like it just wouldn't survive. There's not enough money. People aren't spending enough. Talk to your partner. What's gonna happen?
You have this store that requires 10
Seriously? No way.
Okay, so the general consensus that I'm hearing is that it would just die, right?
Oh yes, death and destruction everywhere.
But there's something else that happens because these people still need to buy groceries. Emma.
Do they make a periodic market?
A periodic market, yes, yes. Hey guys. Thanks. So periodic market. Can someone give me the definition of a periodic market? Go ahead, Emma.
A collection of individual vendors who come together to offer goods and services for a location.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so basically, it's like a limited time thing. They're not like, okay, we're building a store, we've got walls, we've got shelves. They break it down, so I mean, they're coming in with like their trucks and their carts. So I mean, you guys know about like farmers markets, right? And I mean, you've seen food trucks. It's like that, but different.
That makes perfect sense.
I know, clear as mud. I mean, this isn't where like people are like, oh, I want to go to the farmer's market on a date. It's so cute, and I can get my organic kale. Like for them, it's like actually like, because this is in less developed countries, okay, that we're really looking at. And so for them, it's like this is where I'm buying my groceries. So it'll pop up for like a day at a time, and then it'll move on to the next city. And so these markets rotate. And so here's a picture. This is a periodic market in kind of rural Asia. So just kind of set up there, like in centers of like towns and everything. And just kind of their cycle will depend on the culture. So you get Muslim countries, and it's Friday, I believe, is like a holy day. And so their markets aren't gonna pop up on Friday because they're not gonna get the business thing. That's like the day they've got a break. Okay? Or like, what if a periodic market came here? What day are they not gonna be open on? Sunday. Yeah, so even though an area can't support services on their own, they still need them, so they still get them. Like wherever there's money, people will follow the money, even if it's not a lot. So they'll just rotate from town to town, village to village. Yeah. All right. Unless there are any questions, concerns, or personal beefs, you guys are welcome to get started on your assignment.